Good day, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into the rich and dynamic history of Broadway theater, the heart of the American stage, and one of the most iconic cultural institutions in the world. For over a century, Broadway has been home to countless groundbreaking productions, unforgettable performances, and a powerful force in shaping both American and global entertainment. Whether it's musicals, plays, or revivals, Broadway continued to captivate audience with its mix of innovations, creativity, and history. So, let's take a journey through time and explore how Broadway theater developed from its early beginning to the vibrant powerhouse it is today. Its early roots and origin. Before Broadway, as we know it even existed, New York City was already a thriving cultural center in the 18th and early 19th centuries. But the modern concept of Broadway theater began to take shape during the early 80s, when the city became the epicenter of American entertainment. However, it wasn't actually called Broadway at first, but rather the Great White Way, for its broad avenue filled with theaters and eventually its iconic neon lights. The seed of Broadway theater was planted when the first commercial theaters began to open in New York. During the late 70s and early 80s, there were a variety of theaters scattered throughout the cities, but the Broadway Theater, Park Theater, and Chatham Theater were some of the most notable early venues. These theaters hosted plays, vaudeville performances, and operas for New York's growing population. While New York theater scene was thriving, it was still in its infancy, and the plays being performed were mostly European in origins. But this would begin to change as America's cultural identity evolved in the 19th century, driven by rising demands of uniquely American stories. The birth of Broadway. By the mid-80s, the first Broadway theaters were built along Broadway Street, specifically around the area known as Theater District in Manhattan. It was here that Broadway began to emerge as the theatrical capital of the United States. The Metropolitan Theater, the Volks Theater, and the Astor Place Opera House were among the first to line the iconic street, ushering in an era of live entertainment that would transform the American theater landscape.
The golden age of Broadway, early to mid-21st century. The early 21st century marks what we now refer to as Broadway Golden Age. With the advent of musicals as the dominant form of entertainment, Broadway began to attract more attention than ever before. Major landmarks in theater construction like the Gershwin Theater and the Radio City Music Hall were built during this period, ushering in a new era of theater that combines spectacle and storytelling. The 1920s and 1930s saw the rise of musical revues, which were lively shows featuring songs, dances, and sketches. These productions were less about narrative and more about entertainment, drawing inspiration from the vaudeville transition. Formers like Ethel Merman and Al Johnson became household names during this time, thanks to their starring roles in musical productions such as Showboat and George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. By the 1940s, Broadway became synonymous with classic American musicals, with the likes of Rodgers and Hammerstein, Cole Porter, and Irving Berlin dominating the stage. Shows like Oklahoma in 1943, South Pacific in 1949, and Annie Get Your Gun in 1946 became critical and commercial successes, defending the musical theater genre for decades to come. The 1940s and 1950s also brought the age of book musical, where stories were driven by character development and plot rather than just catchy songs and dances. The Broadway musical truly came its own. During this period, shows like My Fair Lady in 1956, West Side Story in 1957, and The King and I in 1951 are prime examples of the Broadway musical ability to entertain and explore social issues, romance, and human struggles. Broadway post-Golden Age, 1960 to 1970s. While Broadway Golden Age was undeniably influential, the 1960s and 1970s marked a period of significant change and experimentation in theater. The traditional Broadway musical was challenged by new forms of performance and a shifting cultural landscape. Rock musical emerged, reflecting the cultural and social upheavals over all the time. The rise of rock and roll led to shows like Hair in 1968, Jesus Christ Superstar in 1970, and Grease in 1932, which mixed popular music with a musical theater form. These shows were revolutionary for their time, addressing controversial issues such as war, politics, and social freedoms. At the same time, shows like Fiddler on the Roof in 1964 and Cabaret in 1956 showcased the darker and more reflective side of Broadway, often grappling with issues of identity, culture, and history.
This period also saw the rise of the concept music show, where the theme or central idea, rather than traditional story structure, became the focus of the show. Stephen Sondheim, known for his complex lyrics and intricate music, became a leading feature of this era with works such as Sweeney Todd, 1979, and Company 1920. The modern era, revival and new genres, 1980 to present. Into the late 20th century and beyond, with the 1980 and 1990, seeing a return to a large-scale, high-budget musical, the rise of corporate sponsorship and investment made that show feel more extravagant, with the lavish set, costume, and special effects. Music shows like The Phantom of the Opera, 1988, Les Miserables, 1987, and The Lion King, 1997, were the blockbuster hits, attracting audiences from around the world and committing Broadway global reputation. The 1980s also saw the rise of the mega music show, large-scale production with sweeping score, dramatic narrative, and big-ticket production value. The Andrew Lloyd Webber painted Phantom of the Opera is the longest-running Broadway show in history, still paying to audience today. Other notable hits from this period include Cat, 1982, and Miss Saigon, 1991. As the Broadway entered the 21st century, a new wave of creativity emerged. Music shows like Lent, 1996, and Wicked, 2003, brought new voice, story, and deserved representation to the stage. Lin-Manuel Miranda Hamilton, 2015, was a revolutionary movement for the American music, leading hip-hop with the history and creating an uncomplicated level of cultural impact. Today, Broadway is more diverse than ever, with an increased focus on representation, inclusivity, and authenticity. Shows such as Dear Evan Hansen, 2016, Heathrow, 2019, and Andrew Proud, 2019, explore contemporary issues, while revival of classic work continue to bring timeless story to modern audience. Conclusion. In conclusion, Broadway theater history is a story of innovation, revolution, and adaptation. From its early days as a stage with small theater to its status as a global symbol of theatrical excellence, Broadway has seen incredible transformation. As the home of music show, play, and everything in between, Broadway remains a cultural touchstone showcasing a diverse range of story, voice, or idea for generations of the theater lover. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of Broadway theater.